They mocked me at Thanksgiving. Then the general called me sir in front of them. My name is Ethan Miles. I'm 35 years old and a senior officer in the United States Army. Tomorrow morning, I'll walk into a high-level meeting at Vanguard Systems, the defense firm where my father and older brother have spent their entire careers, and I'll be sitting across from them, not as their relative, but as the Department of Defense liaison with final authority over the very contract they're hoping to secure. They have no idea I'm the one in charge. To them, I'm still the black sheep who threw away a promising future by turning down an MBA and enlisting in the military instead. 6 years ago, I left home after one too many dinners where I was spoken over, brushed off, and dismissed like some kid who'd wandered off course. It wasn't anger that made me walk out back then. It was something quieter, heavier, the growing realization that no matter how hard I worked, they had already decided who I was supposed to be. I didn't fit the mold. My father used to say the Army was for people who couldn't cut it in the real world. My brother would laugh, add something about wasted potential, and move on to the next topic without waiting for a response. That was the last year I came home for Thanksgiving. I kept in touch at first. I sent emails about promotions, invitations to ceremonies, and even photos from deployments. But after a while, the silence got louder than any rejection. I stopped sending updates. I stopped asking them to care. Now I'm back, not for reconciliation, but for clarity. They'll be in the room tomorrow when my name is introduced. They'll hear the rank, see the insignia, and realize I wasn't drifting. I was leading. I was building something real. And when that moment comes, I won't need to say a word. My presence will do the talking. Let them remember me how they want to tonight. Tomorrow, everything changes. The driveway looked smaller than I remembered. My rental felt too wide, too clean, like it didn't belong next to the dented silver sedan my mom had driven since I was a teenager. I sat there for a moment, staring at the front porch and waiting for something, any sign that this visit might feel different. The porch light was on, casting a pale yellow glow over the chipped railing and the wind chime that hadn't rung in years. I got out slowly, my boots crunching the gravel in a rhythm that used to mean I was home. I rang the bell even though I knew it was pointless. Ethan, my mom's voice called from somewhere inside. Doors open. Of course it was. I pushed it open and stepped into a house frozen in time. Same smell of cinnamon and pine cleaner. Same entryway rug with the frayed corner. The same wall of family photos lining the hallway like a museum curated by bias. Graduation shots of my brother, his wedding day, and his 2 kids grinning in matching sweaters. There was a frame shaped like a football helmet celebrating his high school MVP award. Nothing of me. Not even the photo I mailed her in full dress uniform, the year I made major. I paused in front of the gallery wall, just long enough to feel the weight of absence. In the kitchen, Mom stirred something on the stove without looking up. "Your brother just got promoted again," she said. "He's leading the systems design group now. Everyone at Vanguard is buzzing about it." I leaned against the counter, half listening, half bracing. "That's great," I said, and I meant it sort of. "He's really going places," she added. That phrase again. Like there was only one kind of place that mattered, and I'd chosen a road that didn't lead there. The dining table was set for 6, but the seat placements were clear. My brother would be at the head, Dad next to him, Mom beside them, and I'd be wherever the leftover space allowed. My name wasn't on anything, not the seating, not the conversation, not the legacy that lined the walls. I walked upstairs to drop my bag, passing my brother's childhood room, now turned into a sleek guest suite. Mine still had the twin bed with the creaky frame, the peeling wallpaper, and the same poster of a basketball player I'd stopped idolizing years ago. No medals, no plaques, just a faint scent of forgotten. Downstairs, laughter rose from the kitchen, and I could already hear my dad's booming voice, proud and loud, as he talked about quarterly earnings and engineering milestones. They didn't know, not yet, that their golden boy had just stepped into a contract I controlled, that his newest promotion meant he'd now be reporting to me, whether he realized it or not. But for now, I let them have it. The illusion, the hierarchy, the comfortable script where I was still the one who never quite measured up. Because tomorrow, that script was getting rewritten, line by line, room by room. Dinner was just like I remembered it, which wasn't a good thing. The table was full, the food smelled familiar, but everything else felt hollow. My brother slid into the seat at the head, cracking jokes and talking shop before the first plate was even passed. Dad ate like a man satisfied with the legacy he'd built. He nodded along to every word my brother said, occasionally chiming in with a proud chuckle or a story about the early days at Vanguard. Mom smiled between bites, keeping the rhythm of the evening intact, like a conductor making sure no silence lasted long enough to notice who wasn't being included. Then came the questions. The kind that sounds like small talk but carries a dull edge. Still bouncing around base to base? Are you thinking of settling down soon? Or still just taking it 1 year at a time? There was no real interest behind them, just a casual curiosity you'd give a distant cousin. I nodded, kept my answers short, and let them move on. No one asked what I actually did. No one seemed to wonder how someone could stay in the army for over a decade and not plateau. It was like they had pressed pause on my life the day I left, and nothing since then had been worth pressing play again. My brother launched into a long update about his team's progress on the military software package. He didn't know it was mine. He described the roadmap like he was unveiling a masterpiece, unaware that I had already flagged half of it for revision. Dad leaned back in his chair, grinning, pride practically dripping from his words as he toasted to the future of Vanguard systems. I took a sip of wine and said nothing. Silence was my uniform in that house. It had been since the day I said I was enlisting and watched their expressions shift from confusion to disappointment. That look had never quite gone away. Even now, it lingered in the way they phrased their compliments to my brother, like everything he did validated everything I wasn't. After dinner, I slipped upstairs without much notice. My room was waiting, frozen in time like the rest of the house. The same thin mattress. The same wooden desk I once used to fill out college applications. They never expected me to mail. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the suitcase I'd packed with more care than I'd ever shown for anything in that room. Inside, my uniform rested in precise folds. Midnight blue, pressed sharp, with silver trim and insignia so polished they caught the lamplight like stars. I ran my hand over the metal stitched across the chest. Every ribbon, every stripe, each earned in places none of them had ever asked about. This uniform wasn't just fabric. It was proof. Proof that I had led teams under fire, that I had advised generals, that I had drafted a national cyber defense policy while they were still debating who should carve the turkey. It was a language they didn't understand, so they dismissed it. I stood in front of the mirror, holding the jacket up to my chest, imagining the moment they'd see it. Not just see it, but recognize it. Recognize me. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need their apologies. But I did want them to know they were wrong. Not out of spite, but for the sake of every night I lay awake wondering if I really had wasted my potential. For every voicemail I left that went unreturned. For the ceremony, no one came. Tomorrow, I wouldn't have to explain who I was. I'd walk into that boardroom, in full uniform, with final authority in my hand, and let the silence do the speaking. Because silence was something we all understood, but this time, it would finally be mine. The morning air was crisp, the kind that clears your head before a big day. I arrived 15 minutes early, as always. The parking lot outside Vanguard Systems buzzed with staff weaving between cars, ID badges swinging, coffee cups in hand, each person locked into their own routine. I pulled into a space marked DoD Liaison, authorized personnel only. The guard at the entrance spotted the insignia on my shoulder and straightened his posture like instinct. "Good morning, sir," he said as he scanned my ID. His tone was clipped, formal, the kind of greeting I had never once heard inside my own house. The lobby was polished and modern, all chrome edges and LED-lit floor tiles. People slowed their walk when they saw me, a few nodding out of respect, some just watching, unsure. I knew the look. They were trying to figure out who I was and why I belonged. I didn't slow down. I bypassed the reception desk and stepped into the elevator, punching in the code for the executive floor. As the doors slid closed, I adjusted the jacket's collar, smoothed a line across my sleeve, and let the silence settle. When the elevator opened, my brother was already there. He stood by the window at the far end of the hallway, scrolling through a tablet, completely at ease. Then he looked up and saw me. For a second, his face didn't register what he was seeing. The uniform, the posture, me, then came the confusion, like his brain was catching up one frame at a time. His mouth opened slightly, but he didn't speak. Before either of us could break the silence, a new voice cut through the hallway. Ethan Miles. I didn't realize you'd be attending in person. Lorraine Hart, Vanguard CEO, stepped into view, walking straight toward me with her hand extended and a smile I had only seen reserved for senior officers and visiting brass. "It's an honor to have you on site," she said. I returned the handshake. I thought it would be more efficient to oversee the briefing myself. She nodded, then turned to the small group behind her. "Everyone, this is Captain Ethan Miles, our Department of Defense liaison for the project. He has final approval authority moving forward." You could feel the shift instantly. Conversations stopped. Spines straightened. My father emerged from a side office mid-sentence and froze when he saw me standing there. His eyes scanned the room, looking for context, trying to understand how I fit into this picture. He opened his mouth, then closed it. My brother just stared. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. For once, the silence was theirs to hold. The conference room was bright, sleek, and quiet. I took the seat next to Lorraine at the head of the table, my name already printed on the placard in front of me. The room slowly filled with directors, analysts, and engineers, each offering polite nods and quick introductions. Lorraine opened the meeting with a brief overview and then turned the floor over to me. I stood, nodded once, and began. My voice was calm, practiced, and direct. I walked them through current objectives, funding milestones, and the performance standards we expected for continued partnership. No one interrupted. No one looked past me. When I spoke, heads turned, eyes locked in. I called for adjustments to the cybersecurity architecture, asked for specific documentation, and flagged 2 redundancies in the integration protocol that had gone unnoticed. Then it was my brother's turn. He stood with a tablet in hand, scrolling through his notes, his voice steady at first but thinner than usual. He laid out a plan for the next development phase, highlighting benchmarks and deployment forecasts. On the surface, it sounded solid. When he finished, I paused for just a beat. "Mr. Miles," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Can you walk me through how your rollout timeline accounts for the latency margins outlined in last quarter's directive?" His jaw tensed. He blinked. "I think we can revisit that section," he said. "Please do. Those thresholds aren't suggestions. They're operational mandates." He nodded quickly, scribbling a note. "Understood. I'll update the draft accordingly." The room stayed still for a moment longer, quiet but alert. I turned the page in my folder and moved on. No drama, no gloating, just the sound of structure reasserting itself. The rest of the meeting moved like clockwork. Every question I asked landed with precision. Every correction I made was backed by data. No one questioned the tone. No one challenged the authority in my voice. My father sat halfway down the table, arms crossed, face unreadable, but he didn't interrupt. Not once. By the time we wrapped, the room had shifted. Not just in tone, but in balance. The old hierarchy was gone. What was left was order, earned and undeniable. I closed my folder, thanked everyone for their time, and took my seat. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity, clean and complete. And for the first time, they saw exactly where I stood. The hallway outside the conference room had gone quiet. Most of the team had filtered out, but my father and brother lingered, waiting. I could see it in their posture. Something had shifted. The old confidence was gone, replaced by hesitation. Neither of them quite knew how to hold. My father was the first to speak. He cleared his throat, then gestured down the hall toward a smaller office. We stepped inside. The lights were low, the windows closed, and the silence thick. My mother was already there, sitting stiffly in a chair by the wall. My brother stood with his arms folded, his back to the window. "You've been a captain this whole time," my father said, not angry, just stunned. I nodded. "For longer than you think. We didn't know," he said. "We really didn't understand. I sent messages," I replied. "Invitations, photos, promotion announcements. No one ever answered." My mother looked down at her hands. "We didn't realize what those meant. Colonel, Pentagon liaison. It all sounded like titles, not something we knew how to be proud of." "I stopped trying to explain," I said. "Every time I called, the first thing anyone asked about was how your quarterly reports were going. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked what I was doing, unless it came with a suggestion that I should come home." My brother finally turned around. "I thought you were stuck," he said. "Like just moving from base to base, chasing orders." "That's what you said last night," I reminded him. "You said the military was just following someone else's playbook." He shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't know you were running your own. You didn't ask." I looked at him. "Either of you. You assumed the worst because it was easier than accepting that I took a different path." My father sat down heavily. His hands hung between his knees. "I underestimated you. We both did. I won't pretend I understand everything you've done, but I know what I saw today, and I owe you an apology." He stood and held out his hand, not stiff, not performative, just quiet and real. I took it, no resentment, no grand forgiveness, just recognition. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start. My mother stood beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. "We should have shown up for you, for your commissioning, for everything." I nodded. I stopped expecting it, that's all. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was full of things finally understood, even if they came late. 6 months later, the table was mine. My apartment in DC was quiet, clean, filled with books and framed commendations, but not overdone. The sun had started to set just as the doorbell rang, and for once, I was the one welcoming them in. My father arrived first, holding a rolled-up copy of a defense journal under one arm. He handed it to me without a word. My photo was on the cover, standing beside the general and the project team, a headline about innovation in cyber defense running beneath it. "I've had this in my office for months," he said, his voice rough around the edges. "Thought you should have a copy." I nodded, touched more than I expected to be. "Thanks, Dad." He looked around, taking in the apartment, then gave a small nod like he was checking a box in his mind and finding it full. My mother followed, carefully balancing a homemade dish under foil. "I made the stuffing you liked. Still your favorite, right?" "It is," she smiled, a little awkward, a little hopeful, and I stepped aside to let her in. My brother came last with his wife, carrying a bottle of wine that was probably too expensive for the occasion. He gave me a pat on the shoulder and a quick grin. Dinner was easy. The conversation was light, genuine, without the weight it used to carry. At one point, my brother leaned over and said he'd finally implemented one of the rollout strategies I had suggested. The team pushed back at first, but now it was working better than anything they had before. "Did you tell them where it came from?" I asked. Eventually, he smirked, after I let them think I was brilliant for about 5 minutes. Later, as dishes clinked in the sink and coffee brewed in the background, my father wandered over to the bookshelf. His eyes paused on a medal tucked beside a framed citation. "You led this mission, didn't you? The one they wrote about." "I did," I said quietly. He didn't say more, just nodded. It wasn't a movie ending. No grand speech, no dramatic hugs. But it was real. And sometimes, that's better. Recognition doesn't erase what came before, but when it arrives, honest and earned, it settles in a way that lasts. I never needed it to be enough. But having it now, it meant something.